All right, so are you ready to dive into another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today we're going after a creature that's both terrifying and captivating,
Oh, yeah.
dragons. But here's the thing, we're going beyond fantasy today.
Okay.
We're going to explore whether real creatures might have inspired these legends.
Interesting.
And these legends are found literally all across the globe, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We've got 2 videos lined up for this deep dive.
Wow.
One from Answers in Genesis, which you know is coming at it from a creation science perspective.
Right.
And another from the History Channel, which is going to offer kind of that more mainstream view. So think of this as a quest
Okay.
to unpack what ancient accounts, scientific findings, and even the Bible have to say about dragons.
Ton of fun.
Do you think the lines between myth and reality might be a little blurrier than we think?
You know, it's interesting because when you look at it, even though dragon myths appear in cultures that are separated by vast distances and time periods,
Right.
there is this striking consistency in their descriptions.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking reptilian features, scales, claws, those classic bat-like wings.
Yeah, the wings. Gotta have the wings.
And of course, you can't forget the fiery breath.
Oh, yeah, the fire. Definitely can't forget the fire.
Right.
It really is remarkable how consistent that is.
Yeah.
I was reading about Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian,
Oh, yeah.
and how he wrote about these winged serpents in Arabia, described them as venomous.
Wow.
And the Egyptians even revere ibis birds for killing them.
Really?
Yeah, it seemed like they were seen as a real threat, not just a figment of someone's imagination.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, are we looking at a global phenomenon based on an actual creature?
Yeah.
Or is the human imagination just wired to create like the same monster over and over again?
That's a great question. And it makes me think about the word dinosaur. We throw that term around so casually now.
Yeah, we do.
But it was only coined in 1841.
Oh, wow.
Before that, those giant skeletons they dug up, well, you can guess what they called them.
What's that?
Dragon bones.
Interesting.
So it's really a fascinating shift in terminology
It is.
that reveals a lot about how scientific thought evolves over time.
Yeah.
Even older Bible translations frequently use the word dragon, where modern versions substitute jackal or other less intimidating animals.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to make it less scary.
Right. It's almost like as the concept of dinosaurs dying out millions of years ago became accepted, the old dragon stories had to be reinterpreted.
Reinterpreted to fit that new paradigm, right?
Exactly.
In a sense.
And that brings us to some of the most vivid descriptions of dragon-like creatures in the Bible.
Okay.
Behemoth and Leviathan in the book of Job,
Oh, yeah?
chapters 40 and 41.
For those following along at home,
Talk about chilling. The detail in those descriptions is incredible.
when you compare those descriptions to what we know now about dinosaur features, it's pretty hard to ignore the similarities. Behemoth, for example, is described as having immense size, incredibly strong bones, and a tail like a cedar tree.
It's hard to picture a hippo with a tail like that.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you've got Leviathan,
Oh, yeah.
fierce sea creature, potentially fire-breathing, covered in armor.
Whoa.
Some commentators try to make it fit a crocodile, but
It doesn't really fit.
it doesn't really work, does it?
And that brings us to another piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
Ancient art.
Interesting.
And we're not talking about fantasy illustrations from novels.
Right.
These are depictions of creatures that look remarkably like dinosaurs.
Wow.
From all over the world, created long before anyone knew what a dinosaur skeleton looked like.
Makes you think.
Think about the implications here.
Yeah.
These ancient artists weren't basing their work on scientific reconstructions of fossils.
Right.
They were depicting what they saw, or at least what had been passed down from those who had seen them.
That's incredible.
Some of these examples in these sources are truly mind-blowing.
Okay.
There's Bishop Bell's tomb in England
Okay.
from the 1500s with engravings that look shockingly like sauropods.
Wow.
And then there's an Anasazi Native American petroglyph
Right.
that's practically a mirror image of a sauropod.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about that Cambodian temple carving from the 1100s,
Yeah.
which has an uncanny resemblance to a stegosaurus.
It's crazy how
If these depictions weren't based on real encounters, then what does that say about the power of these creatures to inspire awe and fear across generations?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's not just artwork.
Right.
We've got written eyewitness accounts.
Oh, wow.
Recorded by respected figures throughout history that describe encounters with dragons.
No way.
These weren't just campfire stories.
Yeah.
They were treated as factual observations.
That's wild. For example, Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder, yeah.
A Roman author from the 1st century A.D. wrote about dragons in India. And he wasn't known for being a storyteller.
Right. So pretty interesting.
And St. John of Damascus, a prominent theologian in the 8th century, recorded an account of the Roman army encountering and slaying a dragon.
Oh, wow.
And get this, the city of Worms in Germany actually displayed dragon bones as proof of their existence.
Whoa.
Up until the early modern period.
No way.
That's crazy.
The fact that these accounts were taken so seriously by the people that recorded them is fascinating.
Makes you wonder if maybe there's more to these stories than we give them credit for.
I think so.
Speaking of fascinating stories, have you heard about the Van Meter visitor?
The Van Meter visitor? No.
An account from the 1900s right here in Iowa.
Oh, wow.
That sounds a lot like a dragon sighting.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so this winged creature, estimated at 8 feet long.
8 feet?
Yeah. Terrorized the town for 5 nights.
Oh, my goodness.
Before vanishing into a coal mine.
A coal mine.
It even had a horn on its head that projected light.
Wow, that's crazy.
I think this case really adds another layer of intrigue.
Definitely does.
To the dragon mystery.
Yeah.
Even without concrete proof, it shows that these dragon sightings aren't just ancient legends. They're happening even in modern times. But let's be honest.
Yeah.
The most difficult element to wrap our heads around has got to be the fire breathing.
Yeah. I mean, how could that possibly be real?
Yeah, it's definitely the element that tends to get the most raised eyebrows.
It does.
I understand the skepticism,
yeah.
But if we consider the incredible diversity of creatures that God has created, is it really so far-fetched?
That's a good point.
I mean, look at the bombardier beetle.
Oh, yeah.
It can mix chemicals and shoot out boiling hot gas as a defense mechanism.
That's a pretty amazing feat of natural engineering.
Yeah.
Right. So while the idea of a creature breathing fire may seem fantastical, it might not be as outlandish as we initially think.
That's a good point.
And you've also got that biblical reference to fiery flying serpents in Isaiah 30.6.
And there's that intriguing hollow cavity in the snout of the Sarcosuchus crocodile.
Sarcosuchus?
Yeah, that scientists are still debating the purpose of.
Oh, wow.
Some argue it could have been for vocalization or sensory functions, but the possibility of a chemical defense mechanism can't be entirely ruled out.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so maybe, just maybe, fire breathing isn't as mythical as we've been led to believe.
Maybe not.
But if these incredible creatures were real,
why
don't we see them today?
Yeah, it does make you think.
It really does.
If elephants went extinct, would future generations even believe they existed? Or would they just be relegated to the realm of myths and legends?
That's a chilling thought. It highlights the importance of considering all possibilities, even those that seem far-fetched at first glance. I think it's safe to say that the extinction of large reptiles like dinosaurs isn't a complete mystery. After the global flood described in the Bible, the climate and topography of the Earth changed drastically. An ice age followed, which wouldn't have been ideal for large reptiles.
Definitely not.
Plus, as humans spread out, competition for resources and habitat would have intensified.
Makes sense.
And let's not forget those dragon-slaying legends.
Oh, yeah.
They might not be literal accounts, but they suggest that humans probably played a role.
Definitely.
In the decline of these creatures.
Yeah, especially if they were perceived as dangerous.
Right. Which, let's be honest, if you encountered a dragon, wouldn't you try to defend yourself?
I think that's a natural reaction.
Yeah.
But before we move on,
there's
one more aspect of the dragon myth we need to address. The symbolic dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Often associated with Satan.
Yes. This is where things get a bit more
spiritual.
Yeah. Shall we say spiritual?
It's important to remember that the word dragon has been used both literally and symbolically throughout history.
That's a good point.
And in the Bible, the dragon often represents evil, chaos, forces that oppose God's plan.
Yeah, and if you think about how dragons are often portrayed in mythology as destructive and fearsome creatures,
Right.
that connection makes sense.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost as if the dragon becomes a representation of the spiritual battles
Oh, wow.
that have been raging since the beginning of time.
So those dragon-slaying legends.
Yeah.
What if they're symbolic of those who stand up to evil, who fight for truth and righteousness?
Interesting.
What if those ancient heroes represent the best of humanity?
Yeah.
Those who refuse to bow to darkness.
That's a powerful thought.
Wow. So are you saying that even if literal dragons didn't exist,
Yeah.
the concept itself still holds a deep spiritual meaning?
Absolutely.
That's fascinating.
The dragon, even as a symbol, speaks to something deep within us.
Yeah.
To our fears and anxieties, but also to our courage and our longing for good to triumph over evil.
You know, it's funny. We started this deep dive wondering if dragons were real creatures.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about philosophy and the meaning of life.
Well, that's the beauty of exploration, isn't it?
It is.
Often leads us down unexpected paths.
Yeah.
Challenging our assumptions and broadening our perspectives.
I agree. Speaking of challenging assumptions,
Okay.
I have a bit of a confession. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole researching dragon myths.
Okay.
And I came across some theories that, well, let's just say they're a bit out there.
Ooh.